UFC Fight Night, Perez versus Taira, full card predictions. Starting at the bottom of the card, making my way to the top as always. Someone is mowing their lawn outside, so sorry if you guys hear that, but gotta get these picks done and get the video out. Fight Night is coming up in about 7 hours, so really got to hurry up with this one. First fight of the night, though, we have Julia Pilastri, Josephine Knutson. I'm going with Josephine Knutson here. Josephine, I think, is a more well-rounded fighter. I think Julia has decent striking, I guess, but she's very hittable. Her defensive striking isn't that good. I mean, offensively, she can throw a lot, but I don't think she's great defensively. I think Josephine's more well-rounded as well. Julia has been taken down in multiple of her fights. The Jasmine Vicious fight, she got taken down and controlled. I think Josephine will implement wrestling here to win her the fight. I think that's definitely the path to victory, is mixing up the martial arts, obviously, striking, and then when Julia doesn't expect it, maybe pushing her up against the cage, looking for some clinch control time, throwing some knees in the clinch to rack up some damage, and looking for takedowns as well. I think she'll be able to get the takedowns. She's gotten takedowns in her last 4 fights. Josephine has, and she's gotten over 5 minutes of control time in each of her last 4 fights. So everyone that she's taken down, she's controlling for at least a few minutes. I don't think it's going to be much different with Pilastri. She is the younger girl here, 26 to 28, but I don't think that matters too much. They're both, young prospects. I think Josephine is the better prospect of the two, just because she's more well-rounded. And I think even if it's a pure striking fight, I'd take Josephine, not super confidently, but even if it was a pure striking fight, I'd take Josephine to win. But just the fact that I think she has the better overall game, the game where she can implement wrestling, implement control time, I think it's a Josephine pick, a Josephine win here. Next fight we have is Shayan Nerdenbecki versus Mel Costa, Melquizel Costa. I'm going with Melquizel Costa here. I will say Shayan does have some power, especially in the right hand. He's got some power. He almost knocked out Steve Garcia in round 1 before getting pressured and crumbling under the pressure and to the body shots of Steve Garcia in round 2. I think that both guys actually lost to Steve Garcia. That's something to note. Steve Garcia is a tough guy, though. He has a different style than both of these guys. I think in this fight, Mel Costa will be utilizing a lot of body kicks. I think if you notice one thing about Shayan is he doesn't really like to get hit to the body. And Mel Costa does throw a lot of good body kicks. He throws them very well. I think if he implements those, he'll slow down Shayan. Shayan does have some power, especially early, and he does have solid wrestling. He will look to wrestle here. He'll probably look to get takedowns. I do think he will get some takedowns, but I don't think he'll get a lot of control time or do a lot of damage with the takedowns. So takedowns with no control time, takedowns with no damage doesn't really mean anything. And I think Melquizel Costa will have the grappling to be able to get back up or scramble to his feet. I don't think Shayan's going to be able to just control him and hold him on the mat. And if we're talking about a striking fight, I would definitely favor Mel Costa here. I think he's got more variety in his strikes. I think he's the overall better striker. I just don't think Shayan's really technically amazing on the feet outside of him just throwing massive power. So I will say Costa wins this fight. I'll say by decision. I think it could even be like a 29-28 if Shayan gets some takedowns in round 1, lands some good shots. But I do think Melquizel Costa will be able to outland Shayan on the feet over the course of 3 and win a decision. Next fight we have is Jekka Seregi versus Weston Wilson. I don't really have much to say about this one. I think it's pretty clear what the two options are. Either Jekka's going to knock out Weston Wilson probably early, or Weston Wilson. I don't even think Weston Wilson's going to be able to get takedowns here. He hasn't been able to, shoot any takedowns, any meaningful takedowns in his last 2 fights. Now, I understand Gene Silva and Joe Anderson Brito are very good prospects. At least Brito is, but even Silva's a dangerous prospect to go up against. I just think that Wilson's got 0 striking. He's got negative striking. Jekka Seregi's got a ton of power. I don't think Jeka's chin is really the best. I've seen him get cracked on multiple occasions. He's never been like knocked out in any fights. All of his losses have come to either accumulation of ground and pound or by submission. So if Weston Wilson gets on top of him, it's going to be bad news. But Weston Wilson doesn't have the wrestling to take guys down. He's not a guy that, he can swing to the back and, get a back take. But I just don't see, unless Jekka loads up tremendously on the right hand and overthrows, which I don't even think he'll do here. I just think he should be the much cleaner, better striker. Not that Jekka's some sort of like amazing world beater prospect, but I mean, Weston Wilson, I'm less than impressed with Weston Wilson in the UFC. I don't think he's UFC caliber. I think the fight could look exactly like the Gene Silva fight. It could be over in the first round just by Jekka landing combinations of heavy, heavy punches and the referee stepping in to save Weston Wilson. I think that's that's a very realistic possibility, and that's what I will pick to happen. Next fight we have is Carly Judas versus Gabriela Fernandez. Judas was only 24 years old when she was on the Contender Series. She's 25 years old now. She went to war with Ernesta Caricati, and that was it was a split decision. It was a very competitive fight. She's overall inexperienced. I know Gabriela Fernandez has fought nearly 3 times as much as a pro, so I understand why she's the favorite here, just because she's fought much more as a professional. However, Carly Judas, I think, is more of a dog. She's willing to scrap. She's a solid striker. She mixes things up well. Solid knees in the clinch, decent kicks to the body. She can be hit with punches. Carly can, but she'll slip shots well, return punches and stuff of her own as well. So I think she will be the one that's throwing more. I think the volume edge will be on the Carly side. I think that Fernandez will have the power. She throws hard leg kicks. She's got power in her hands. She's got decent head kicks as well. But if she doesn't knock out Carly, I think Carly will be the one that will just keep pressuring. Gabriela has no problem fighting on the back foot. If she's constantly moving back and Carly's the one pressuring, Carly's the one throwing volume, the one with the more output, I think Carly's the one that can definitely, win this fight just by landing more, throwing more, and in the eyes of the judges, be the one that's doing more ultimately in the end. Another thing I don't like about Gabriela Fernandez is against Teresa Bleda, she got taken down, and against Jasmine Jasudavicius, and both of her losses in the UFC, she got taken down multiple times, and she got pressed up against the cage, she got taken down, and she was unable to get up. She has no get up ability, or at least she hasn't shown get ups in the UFC so far. She hasn't shown an ability to get back up. She's content with being on her back, which I don't like. I don't like, fighters that are just like being on their back, or unless you have a good submission threat from your back, unless you're constantly throwing up submissions, trying to sweep, trying to do stuff like that. But if you're just content with laying on your back, it's not going to win you a fight. And Gabriela Fernandez has done that on more than one occasion, so I don't like that. Not that I think Carly Judas is going to have a ton of wrestling success, although I think that is a possible game plan implementation. I think she can definitely implement the wrestling if she wants to mix it up, just because I'm less than impressed with Gabriela Fernandez. I'm really I have nothing really good to say about her grappling, about her wrestling, and even on the feet, I don't think she's that great. I think Carly Judas is a solid underdog. I think this fight could look very competitive with Gabriela Fernandez throwing more power, but Carly throwing more volume, more output. If Carly fights how she did on the Contender Series 8 months ago, if she fights a similar game plan to that, I think she beats Gabriela Fernandez. I really do. I think Gabriela will need to land some big shots, will need to hurt Carly in order to gain some respect and to let Carly know that, you're not just going to throw a bunch of volume on me without, getting hurt because of it. But I don't know. I just 25 years old, fighting in a Lafayette. I'm going to take Carly Judas to get this one done over Gabriela Fernandez. And last fight on the prelims already, not a huge card, not really the best card in general, but we have Nate Maness taking on Jimmy Flick. Uh, Again, like, what's really to say here? Jimmy Flick has a submission threat, and that's about it. He's not a great wrestler. He's not the worst wrestler in the world, but he's not really a good wrestler. I think Nate Maness is the better wrestler of the two. I think Nate Maness is the far better striker, and he's a decent grappler himself. Now, Jimmy Flick, I do think, is the more opportunistic grappler. I think he probably is the overall better grappler, but outside of that, I think Nate Maness is better everywhere. I don't think Maness has the same quit in him that Flick does. I've seen Jimmy Flick quit in so many different fights before. He quits over and over. When things don't go his way, he gives up. It's clear to say, and I know you can look at the Malcolm Gordon fight and say, well, he didn't quit against Malcolm Gordon. That's fair, but look at the last two fights before that. Charles Johnson, Alessandro Costa. He kind of just covers up and gets finished when he can't find a submission, when he can't find a triangle or an arm triangle or guillotine or flying. You know what I mean? When he can't find a submission, when he can't find what he's looking for, he kind of just wilts under the pressure. And I think that's probably what's going to happen here against Nate Maness. Striking edge is clear for Maness. I think he has the power to hurt Jimmy Flick. Flick does have the submission. Like I said, if Maness does something stupid and gets his back taken or gets taken down, this could always look, in hindsight, it could look like, well, Jimmy Flick at plus 410, he always has a decent, he has 17 wins and 15 of them are by submission, right? All of his wins, 15-0 to the submission. So he is a very good grappler, but I just think in MMA, you got to be more well-rounded than that. If Maness loses, I'd be shocked. So I am going to pick him to win. He is a minus 560, so you can't really do anything with that. But I do think Nate Maness will knock out Jimmy Flick. He should, at least. He should knock out Jimmy Flick. Main card, Adam Fugit versus Josh Quinlan. I don't like Josh Quinlan very much, especially after his last few fights. Hasn't really shown an ability, great ability at all. Neither has Adam, but I think Adam's got solid cardio. I think he's a guy that can push as the rounds go on. I think he's more well-rounded. Josh Quinlan hasn't really shown an ability to do much at all in the UFC. I know he's fought decent competition, but Adam was able to get takedowns. Even in the Michael Morales fight, he was able to take Morales down in round one. Didn't rack up a ton of control time, but like a minute or two of control time against Michael Morales, a really strong, really good prospect. Not terrible, not a terrible fight. He ended up losing, but it was a competitive fight up until, when he got finished in round 3. I do think Adam overall is the better mixed martial artist than Josh Quinlan. Quinlan's got the power. Apparently he's a black belt in jiu-jitsu. Haven't really seen anything from him that shows that he's, a really great grappler. I think Adam's got the wrestling advantage. He's training at a Fight Ready, which is a good gym, obviously. I don't even think the one thing that I am concerned with about Adam is his durability. Adam's durability is not very good. I think that's pretty clear to say. He doesn't have the greatest durability. He can get knocked out. He's been knocked out a few times in all of his fights. The Michael Malott was a club and sub. He got knocked down and then he got submitted. The Michael Morales one, he just got overwhelmed in round 3 and finished by Morales. It wasn't just a one-punch knockout. It was accumulation. And then he also got knocked out on the regional scene as well. So a bit of a worry about the chin of Adam. He is very hittable, and I don't like that, especially against someone like Josh, who's probably going to be juiced up on all the roids. But, if he doesn't get knocked out here, especially early, if he doesn't get knocked out in round 1, I don't think Josh is really a great volume striker. I think Adam can throw more volume. I think he can mix in the wrestling. Even if he can't get a lot of control time, I think just trying to mix it in will help him out. And overall, I'm going to take Adam as a dog here. Everyone's on Josh, or most people. Nearly 70% of people are picking Quinlan. Don't really understand why people are so confident in Quinlan. What has he shown in the UFC? He knocked out the chiniest fighter in UFC history, in Jason Witt. Fair play, I guess. I don't really think that's a huge accomplishment for him. I think Adam, honestly, I think Kinoshita is a better win than Jason Witt, just because Kinoshita, he was the young. I know Kinoshita has kind of been proven as not what he was cracked out to be, but he was supposed to be this great prospect, and Adam went in there as a massive underdog and beat him in the first round, elbowed him, ground and pounded him, and finished him in round one. So Adams won as an underdog before. He's fought solid competition, and he even looked solid in the Morales fight before he lost. Didn't look great against Mike Malott, but Mike Malott's borderline top 15. He's a solid prospect. I know he just lost to Neil Magny, but he's still not a bad fighter. Uh, I'm going to roll the dice on Adam Fugit here. I just don't really believe in Josh Quinlan. Even if Quinlan gets this one done, if Quinlan wins this, where does he go from here? It's not like I don't see him really winning many other fights in the UFC. Um, Josh, like you could say the same about Adam. He's not the most athletic. Josh probably is more athletic, but either guy, I think this is kind of a lower level fight in the division. So we'll see what happens. I'll take the underdog and Adam. Moving along on the main card, we have Asu Amabayev versus Jose Johnson. I'm taking Asu Amabayev here. Jose Johnson is a huge flyweight. I don't know how he even made this weight class. He was fighting previously at bantamweight 135. Now he dropped down to flyweight. So 6 feet tall at flyweight is ridiculous. I don't know how you can cut that much weight at being 6 feet tall. Even Sean O'Malley's a bantamweight. Just think about this. Sean O'Malley's a bantamweight, right? Sean O'Malley fights at 135, and he's like, what is he, 5'11", 5'10"? Like, he's a tall bantamweight, and people look at him like, wow, how does he make the weight? Look at Sean Woodson. Sean Woodson's a 145er that's like 6'2". People are like, how did these guys make 35? How did these guys make 45? Jose Johnson's 6 feet tall at 125. I don't know how that's possible. I don't know how he made the weight. That's ridiculous. I'm not sure if he's going to be compromised by that weight cut. I think Asu Amabayev probably will have the better gas tank if the fight goes long. I would imagine Jose Johnson cutting that amount of weight is not healthy for him. I think Jose Johnson also, not I think, I know he's been taken down in all of his fights. He got taken down multiple times, even in his wins. Taken down multiple times by Chad and Hellinger. Twisted in round one by Damon Blackshear. Taken down multiple times by Jack Cartwright. And if you look on his Contender Series loss against Ronnie Lawrence, he was taken down, I know that was back in 2020. He was still taken down 11 times. So takedown defense is not very good for Johnson. He gets taken down by a gust of wind. I think he is huge for the division. So if he lands like a big, knee up the middle, or he lands like a knockout, would it be the most surprising? No, especially at minus 560. I think the line is way too wide, but am I going to pick Johnson? Absolutely not, just because he has a clear disadvantage in the wrestling. Asu Amabayev, very good wrestler. He can push a pace. He's one of those guys where he'll just keep pressuring you, shooting takedowns over and over, taking you down, looking to, establish dominant control, and also looking to submit. So I could see Asu Amabayev submitting Jose Johnson, or at the very least, just dominating for 3 rounds. But I think a submission is very live as well for Asu as the rounds go on. So Asu Amabayev will be the pick in this one. Next fight we have is Garrett Armfield taking on Brady Heastand. I think this fight's actually, it could go a few different ways here. I think this fight could go a few different ways. I don't understand the overwhelming love on the Armfield side. Everyone's picking Armfield, 86% of people. Look, I understand he's a good striker, but I was on Armfield. I actually want to say this. I picked Armfield against Brad Katona, right? Just for reference, because I believe 90% of people picked against him in that fight, or a large majority picked against him. In the Brad Katona fight, 91% of people were picking Katona. I was one of the only ones on Armfield at the time. So I don't know what happened. Everyone was picking Katona. Now everyone changed their minds on Armfield. I think this is actually a pretty tough fight for him. I think this could be a tough fight for both guys. I think that Armfield has the striking edge. I think if this fight ends in round 1, it will be a clear, or if Armfield keeps us on the feet, he will dominate, I believe. However, I think Brady Heastand's the better wrestler. I think he's a better grappler. He's got better cardio. He's the bigger guy. So all of those factors coming into play, I think it's dog or pass. I think that Garrett has a chance to win, certainly. But I wouldn't bet him at this number. If it was even odds, if it was minus 110, if it was a pick 'em, I'd probably lean Armfield just because he is, like I said, the better striker. And if he can defend the takedowns, he probably will win. But I've seen Garrett Armfield lose these type of fights before. I've seen him get taken down. I've seen him get submitted. I've seen him get not dominated, but I've seen him gas out and not look as good as the rounds go on. Whereas Brady, he stands a guy that will just push through the pain. He'll get, look at all of his fights. He always gets bloodied up. He always gets beaten up early. And he comes back and ends up taking guys down, getting control, looking for submissions. The Baccarel Dana fight, Brady was losing that fight. He was getting, beat up a little bit. And then in round 3, what did he do? He came back and ended up finishing the fight in round 3. He's just one of those guys that's not going to quit on himself. He's going to keep pushing the wrestling. He's going to keep shooting takedowns, trying to look to get to the back, look to get, submission. So overall, I think this is this is a fight where Brady can push the pace late if he survives early. I think what it is either Armfield could get him out of there early, or Heastan could look good late. If the fight goes to distance, I think it's going to be 50-50. I think it's going to be a toss-up. And in that case, because I think it can be a 50-50 fight, I'll lean with the underdog and Brady Heastan. I also like that he's training. He got some training in the last few months at Syndicate. I know his main gym is Ski Jitsu in Washington with Michael Chiesa and all those guys, but him getting training in with Merab as well in Vegas is very good. Training with Merab, one of the best guys in the world, can only help you. So I'll take Heastan as an underdog here. I'll roll the dice on him. Featured fight of the night, we have Lucas Almeida versus Timmy Kwamba. I don't have too much to say about this one. I'm taking Timmy Kwamba. I think he's the better prospect of the two. He's younger, 25 to 33, so 8 years younger for Timmy. I think he's the one that's going to be making the faster improvements. I think Lucas Almeida is not really that great in terms of, I don't think Almeida is going to be able to knock out Timmy, and I think that's his path to victory. Lucas Almeida, as far as I know, has never won a decision. He's never been the distance, or he's been the distance once and he lost. He has 9 wins by knockout, 5 by submission. I don't see him submitting Timmy Kwamba. Sure, he's got some power, but honestly, I think the guy, Lucas Almeida, for his record, I think he's a bit of a fraud. He got dominated badly by Pat Sabatini, one of the most dominant fights I've seen of the year at the time. And then Andre Fili knocked him out in round 1. Just clipped him, dropped him, and finished him with ground and pound. If you look through all of Lucas Almeida's fights, lost to Daniel Zellhuber on Contender Series, beat Michael Trezano in his first fight in the UFC. Like, he's got power. But I think that's all he has. As far as Timmy Kwamba, I just think he's the overall better fighter. Him losing to Blashoki, it was a short notice fight that went to a split decision. Not the worst look in the world. I get it. Some people were saying he should have looked better, but it's short notice, and he was an underdog in that one as well. I think this one, he's got a training camp for it. I think they put this fight together. The UFC did because they know Timmy Kwamba is a legitimate prospect. Training out of Vegas as well, training with some of those guys in Vegas. I think someone probably knows something. Young guy versus someone who I have no faith in whatsoever in Lucas Almeida. So the pick for me will be Timmy Kwamba for sure. I definitely believe, unless Almeida knocks him out. I think Timmy Kwamba should win the striking exchanges and get the win. Co-main event, we have Miles Johns and Douglas Silva de Andrade. First thing I want to mention is the age differential. Miles Johns is 30 versus 38, about to be 39-year-old Douglas Silva de Andrade. If this was like 3 or 4 years ago, I would pick Andrade, but I think Miles Johns, at this point, I think he's ready for this kind of step up. I think he's much younger. I think he's got more to give, and at this point of his career, I think he's probably better as far as the durability. I think he probably has a durability edge at this point. Douglas Silva de Andrade got hurt bad in round 3 of the Cody Stamann fight, And Silva de Andrade, he's not an easy guy to get out of there whatsoever. He's pretty tough guy, but I didn't really like the look in round 3 against Stamen. He won the fight, but Cody Stamen's, as we've seen, he's solid, but nothing, spectacular. Miles Johns, on the other hand, I'm not saying Miles Johns is some like elite prospect. I don't think that, but I do think Miles Johns has decent enough striking. I think he's got power. I also think he has wrestling if he needs it. He can utilize the wrestling. He was able to take down someone like Dan Argueta, who is a collegiate wrestler. So I think Miles Johns has the wrestling. I think he probably could implement a few takedowns against Douglas Silva de Andrade. Andrade isn't, he's not a guy who just gets controlled for a ton of time, but he has been controlled before. He has been taken down before. So Johns could do that. And ultimately, a lot of it is just because of the age. As I said, if this was a few years ago, if this was, if Silva de Andrade was 35 instead of 39, I'd probably take him here. But Miles Johns is the one that's been looking better in his last few fights. He's on a 3-fight win streak after losing to John Castaneda. The Castaneda fight was a bad look, I understand, but the last 3 fights, Vince Morales, Dan Argueta I know he tested positive. He's probably on the juice right now. And then Cody Gibson. I do think Miles Johns is the one that will get this one done. I don't want to say it's a passing of the torch because I don't think Miles Johns is going to go, I don't think he's going to make a run to the title. I don't think he's going to make a run into the top 10, but I do think this is kind of like one of those fights where Silva de Andrade in his prime would have won, but at this point, Miles Johns probably will be the one to get it done. And lastly, certainly not least, actually a very good main event, in my opinion, Alex Perez versus Tatsuro Taira. I've always been pretty high on Tatsuro Taira. I think he's got good offensive grappling, good ability to get to the back, which is something I want to mention in the fight against Perez here. So obviously he's also an undefeated prospect, 15-0. Perez isn't an easy guy to defeat, but look at all of Perez's losses in the UFC. So a lot of the losses Perez has, he lost to Muhammad Mokaev. I know that was a competitive fight, but one thing I want to mention about the Mokaev fight was Mokaev was compromised, right? He was not. I don't know if he had I forget what exactly he had, but I think it was some sort of like stomach illness or virus. He had something going on with him. Mokaev was not himself. He was not himself that fight. He did not look amazing, but he still won the fight, and that was when he was compromised. So I think Taira's better than Mokaev. I think Mokaev's good. I think Taira's better. I think Taira's a better prospect than Mokaev. I think he's got more dangerous striking than Mokaev. I think his wrestling, Mokaev definitely has the wrestling edge, but I think Taira has the overall grappling edge of the two. So this is a matchup I want to see Tatsuro Taira versus Muhammad Mokaev. Maybe in like 3 or 4 years, or maybe even sooner, maybe in like 2 years, they'll end up fighting for the belt. That would be a dream fight for me. I would love to see Tatsuro Taira versus Muhammad Mokaev. That would be amazing. That's one of the fights I've been waiting on, been wanting to see for a while. So hopefully we get to see that eventually. But as far as this fight, outside of the Alex Perez loss to Mokaev, look at all of his other losses. Alexandre Pantoja submitted him, got to his back standing, and submitted him in round 1. Davison Figueiredo got into some scrambles, and Figueiredo submitted him in 2 minutes. I know he has a lot of wins outside of that. You look at a lot of his wins, he has won a lot of fights. But one thing Perez isn't the best in is grappling. Now, he does have very good defensive wrestling. I will say that. He has good defensive wrestling. He has a good takedown defense. But once you get him down, once you get to his back, once you get to if he shoots a takedown or something and you get him in a guillotine, or in Taira's case, if he wraps around to the back and gets a body triangle, Perez isn't the greatest at defensive grappling. Now, wrestling and grappling are two different things. The wrestling of Perez is good, but the grappling I don't think is his strong suit. I think if Perez and Taira end up getting into a scramble, Taira will be the one that will end up in the dominant position, or will get to a choke or something like that. So I do like Tatsuro Taira here. Now, the striking, I think, can definitely favor Perez early. Perez has power. He just won his last fight. I picked him, actually. I picked him against Nicolau, but I just think this fight's a little bit different than Nicolau. I think Taira's a different fighter. I think Taira has a threat in multiple areas. Taira has a grappling threat, and he also has a power threat. He hasn't fought the better level of competition. He's fought much worse competition, but he's looking very good in a lot of those fights. He's submitting a lot of those guys. He even knocked out Carlos Hernandez, dropped him badly, and then finished him with ground and pound. So I think Taira, he's also training out of Colorado, so his striking will be improving massively. He's only 24 years old, the 34-year-old Perez. I think Perez is a finished prospect, or a finished fighter as he is. I think Perez, he's not going to be making new improvements. He's probably the same fighter he was in his last few fights, whereas Tatsuro Taira can look better and better and better as each fight goes on. So I like Tatsuro Taira. I think he'll be a champion one day. I'm not sure where he'll be a champ or like at what time frame, but I think within the next few years for sure. If he beats Alex Perez, he's probably one fight away from a title shot. So I think Tatsuro Taira is very good. I do think he will eventually get to the belt, and I think this is his first huge test. Right, this is a huge step up. This is a huge test for him, and I think he'll pass it. I think early on he could be in some trouble. Maybe Perez hurts him a little bit in round one, maybe even drops him, and then Taira survives and then gets back up and eventually gets the back and finds a submission. So those are my picks for UFC Fight Night Perez versus Taira. Thank you guys very much for watching. And as always, I will see you in the next one.